What occurs when Karoline Leavitt is made to look foolish on live television by a liberal TV host? Nobody anticipated her dropping a bombshell that would startle the entire studio. What did she disclose, though, regarding the use of millions of tax dollars? It was the reason this moment went viral.
Every penny is being accounted for honestly.
Why impose this pause with so little notice? Why not give organizations more time to plan for the fact that they are about to lose, in some cases, really crucial federal funding, at least for a period of time?
There was notice. It was the executive order that the president signed. There's also a freeze on hiring, as you know, a regulatory freeze, and there's also a freeze on foreign aid. And this is, again, incredibly important to ensure that this administration is taking into consideration how hard the American people are working. And their tax dollars actually matter to this administration. You know, just during this pause, DOGE and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump, with the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. DOGE and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. About to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
A tense confrontation between Karoline Leavitt and Ethan Caldwell, a prominent liberal talk show host known for questioning conservative guests, was anticipated by the audience as the cameras rolled. Karoline sat opposite him, calm, confident, and prepared for whatever lay ahead. She was unaware, however, of Ethan's ulterior motives. Ethan's sneer immediately revealed his true agenda, which was to concentrate on government expenditures, fiscal policies, and tax allocations. Leaning back in his chair, he began. Karoline cocked an eyebrow, recognizing the direction this was taking. Conservatives love to talk about responsible spending, but let's be honest, you're just as guilty of wasting taxpayer money as anyone else, she said. The crowd chuckled a little, anticipating his next move, Ethan added. While Republicans claim to be reducing waste, conservative-backed budgets have funded lavish retreats, private jets for public servants, and, get this, tax breaks for billionaires. That sounds contradictory, doesn't it? The image of Karoline's face was magnified. With a small smirk of her own, she leaned forward, not flinching, like she had been waiting for this moment. She tilted her head and asked, "Waste you want to talk about? Okay. Let's examine the real destination of millions of your tax dollars." Ethan's eyes blinked. An uneasy change occurred throughout the audience. After retrieving a stack of official government reports from her luggage, Karoline placed them on the table. The sound reverberated across the quiet studio. She said sharply and clearly, 50 million, that's the amount of money the Biden administration paid abroad to buy condoms for Gaza. The audience gasped, the producers froze, the studio exploded, and Ethan, for the first time in his career, remained silent. And what came next? The country as a whole responded. As Ethan tried to comprehend what he had just heard, he blinked quickly and his smirk vanished. The studio went still, the type of silence that makes even the most experienced TV hosts cringe. As the impact of her statement became clear, Karoline sat there composed, self-assured, and unfazed. Then, as was to be expected, Ethan rushed to get better. As he shuffled his papers, he laughed nervously and mumbled, "Wait, hold on," looking for anything that might contradict her assertion. $500,000? That isn't totally true, in my opinion. Karoline did not blink. The pile of reports before her was tapped. She said steadily, "It's right here. A breakdown of the Biden administration's foreign aid expenditures by line item, $50 million. Gaza. Does that sound like what the American people agreed to, Ethan?" The crowd exploded. They weren't prepared for this. Some muttered to one another, some shook their heads, and some gasped. With his face flushed in the studio lights, Ethan faked another unnatural chuckle. The producers were frozen, and nobody wanted to touch this, so he glanced around the room in the hopes of finding some backup. Well, Karoline tilted her head further. Which would you prefer? Talking about government waste, or continuing to act as though it doesn't exist? Ethan took a deep swallow. He realized he needed to shift the topic. "Foreign aid is a complicated matter, Karoline," he said, attempting to recover control. Furthermore, I believe it is reckless to concentrate on a single small expense when we ought to be talking about... However, Karoline wasn't letting him get away with it. An insignificant expense? She raised an eyebrow and cut off. No, Ethan, I'm not sure. I believe that the Ohio single mother who is having a hard time affording groceries may have some insight into the use of her taxes. Is she willing to pay for birth control in Gaza when she can hardly afford eggs, in your opinion? Wow! The crowd exploded once more. In his chair, Ethan moved. He could sense his nervous expression being captured by the camera as it zoomed in on his face. He was losing credibility as well as command of the conversation. What about Karoline? She was far from done. What followed caused the internet to blow up. He sensed that Ethan was drowning. He looked to his producers, hoping for a lifeline. But they were powerless since Karoline had total control. The cameras were rolling, and the audience was hooked in. Shifting in his seat, he tried to gather himself. All right, Karoline, he started, making himself laugh again. Changing figures and picking and choosing expenditures is simple, but let's face it, there is a significantly higher budget for this initiative alone. The United States has consistently provided overseas aid, and... Karoline's hand was raised. Ethan, are you even aware of the amount we've spent just in the past year? Ethan went cold. He was missing the number. Karoline tapped the document once more while leaning closer. $201 million. We sent it to Gaza and the surrounding area in the past 12 months alone. But here at home, families are having a hard time, grocery prices are going up, and our border is open, and you want to tell me that none of this is worth discussing? There was a gasp from the audience. Others began to applaud. Other people were shook their heads in shock. The room was thick with tension. Ethan attempted to laugh it off once more. Karoline wasn't finished, but I believe you're oversimplifying a rather complicated problem. Ethan, no. Simply put, Americans are fed up with being misled. They are fed up with their taxes being used for absurd schemes while they are unable to pay for even the most basic requirements. Simply put, you don't know what to say when someone calls out a system that is failing them because your entire career and profession are based on defending it. The crowd went crazy. Great cheers, some even got to their feet. Ethan's expression went white. He was losing control, losing the audience, losing everything. His only action now? Quit talking. Well, he added hurriedly, faking a tight-lipped smile, unfortunately, we're out of time. Karoline, always a pleasure. Karoline gave a sly smile. She was fully aware of the recent events. Of course, she remarked nonchalantly as she leaned back in her chair. I appreciate being here. The damage was done the instant the cameras stopped. The internet became viral. There were clips of the interview on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. On live television, Karoline Leavitt embarrassed a liberal presenter, according to the headlines. When Ethan Caldwell attempted to justify Biden's spending, he was demolished. Because of this, people are tired of the mainstream media, and Ethan ended up being the week's most popular meme. Even some liberals began criticizing him because his attempt to make Karoline look terrible had gone so wrong, but Karoline left with more strength than before. The argument was ended, and she had prevailed.